interesting actually, because I want to get your thoughts on one particular investment in youth. Brendan Rodgers says that Raheem Sterling should sign his new contract very, very soon indeed.
Well, hopefully that'll be concluded within the next 24 hours. I said before that there was never a real issue. It was just a matter of timing, really. And we hope that over the next couple of days that can be complete. We were always calm, and as I said, I speak a lot with Raheem and his representatives, and there was never any issues from their side either. It was just about making sure that we take care in terms of the financial, but also important the football plan for the player. It wasn't just all financial. This was about a young player who's rocketed from playing in the youth team in the reserves into becoming a full an international football player. So a lot has happened in his young life, and it was just about making sure that there's that protection for him going forward, as I said, both in his financial situation, but equally importantly his football plan. And everyone, I've always been confident that this was going to be the best place for him, and thankfully, as I said, the kid is very focused and devoted to Liverpool, and his representatives know this is the best place for him. So as I said, once that gets concluded, which, like as I said, will hopefully take place, then he can start the next part of his development and hopefully keep progressing.
Well, he is progressing, but Lawrie and I have been rowing while we've been watching that VT, because Lawrie doesn't agree with me that Sterling is worth the 50 grand a week that he should be asking for. The word is that he will accept possibly around about 35, 40, but Lawrie doesn't even think he's worth that. Tell us why, Lawrie.
Well, I don't think he's certainly worth £50,000 a week at this moment in time. I mean, you know, we've got to be realistic. £50,000 a week is £2.5 million a year. I think he's on 100 grand a year at the moment in time. So he's going to move up to you know, £2,000 a week to £35,000 a week. There's still a lot of pocket money, isn't it, for a player that's just turned 18? Now, you know,
yeah, but we do him a disservice though, because he's playing regular first team football. But you're pointing to the record. Let's have a look at the record.
Yeah, you look at the stats. 28 games, he scored 1 goal and got 2 assists. For me, I mean, he's obviously a very talented young man, and we're not taking that away from him to get in the England side at this stage. But you need better return than that for me. 28 games, 1 goal. You're a winger. If you're not scoring goals, all right, you know, you're not Ronaldo. You're not scoring that rate of goals. But then you're making goals for other people. Two assists in 28 games. For me, although as you rightly say, he's playing every week, and Brendan Rodgers obviously likes him. What happens now, and the problem happens now, he'll sign his 5-year deal, which will guarantee him, you know, probably the best part of what, 10, 12 million pounds guaranteed. And then sometimes you see with all the ones that sign for Arsenal, all the Arsenal lads that sign these new terms, it takes money out of the equation for, you know, there's the hierarchy of needs, and they feed, house yourself, you know, so they've taken that out. The feeding and housing's gone now. So the only thing that's driving them on is their own desire to do well. And what happens with too many young lads, and you see it with Balotelli, £170,000 a week, you know, and he's still a child. I mean, he's training.
He doesn't have the right attitude, and
that's what I'm saying. When you give the money, and I'm not talking about Sterling in this instance. When you give the money to kids too early, and their agents demand it. The agent said, "We'll play 28 games. I want £2 million a year." In my day, and going back to Mickey Hazard, you know, you had to play 100 games before you sort of got your first decent contract. You know, you're on your contract with appearances that got you up to first team money, but it was appearance money, and that was your incentive. Then you did your 100 games, said, yeah, you're a player, we'll have you. 28 games, and they're giving them £12 million contracts. It's the nature of the beast at this moment in time, because they're all worried about losing it, because if they don't give it to him, someone else will give it to him. But you look at Sturridge.
Yes.
Sturridge has signed a massive deal going out of Man City.
I agree with you on that.
He signed an absolute massive deal going to Chelsea, and hasn't really delivered. And now they're talking about going to Liverpool. You know, and once you, I'm not saying it's a comfort zone, but once you do not have to worry about money anymore. You can buy the biggest house you want. You can go out with the X Factor celebrity. You can flame it. You've got everything you want. You need to concentrate on your football, because the money will always come. The money will always. I can understand Ronaldo saying he's not loved by Real Madrid, because Ronaldo should be one of the 2 top paid players in the world, and I can understand his grievance. And people say to him, well, how much more money does he need? It's not about that. He is one of the best players in the world, one of the 2 best players. He should be one of the top 2 paid.
But you don't think Sterling?
He's a decent player, and he's a decent prospect, and he might be a great player. He might be a great player. But at this moment in time, 28 games, 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 assists. For me, isn't the finished product.
And
he's getting finished product money before it's been the finished product.
Let me bring Matthew Moore in, because Matthew, my opinion is that if you're paying somebody to do a job of a certain standard, and they're able to get into the team ahead of people like Andy Carroll on 70 grand a week, they can't get in the side. Stuart Downing, well, he's been playing the last few weeks, but Brendan Rodgers says he can go. So if you're playing Sterling regularly in the first team, why can you not pay him first team wages?
I think that 50 grand a week for an 18-year-old is a little too much money for a person.
But Matthew, forget the age. If he is playing in the first team, why should he not get first team money?
Well, yeah, first team money, but I mean,
you can make that up with appearance money.
Lawrie said there about the statistics. 1 goal, 28 games, 3 assists.
But it doesn't matter if he is playing for. If you work in your job and somebody else is in the same job and they're being paid more.
Danny's 26 and played loads of Premier League games, scored loads of Premier League goals, made loads of assists, played in the England team. So he's earned his value, if you want. Now, Brendan Rodgers might not fancy him and might say, well, I don't value you at that and we'll let you go. But someone else will value it. Sterling, at this moment in time, what they can, we're talking about Sterling, but we're talking about younger players generally. Because you've seen all the Arsenal players sign great big new contracts this week. You can't do it now, but what they used to do in my day was you used to get a basic salary that was, and if you played in the first team, that brought you up to the basic wage that the first team players were in. So your incentive was to stay in the first team because then you were earning the same with them. But when you had a dip and you were out, you went back to what was your lower salary. Whereas the first team players are people that have played 100, 200 league games and have proven themselves as first team players, and therefore that was why they were on that starting salary. And that's what I'm saying, that's been taken out of the game now, where you come in, you have 28 games and suddenly you get in £2.5 million a year. And the development, as you say, people like Sturridge hasn't done it so far. You see Balotelli, what he will do, where he will end up, and we tell him, but where will he end up? Will he be a great player? 170,000. What amazed me when I saw the fine was 340,000 was that he was earning £170,000 a week.
Well, let me bring Matthew back in because quite clearly we disagree, Matthew, and you're siding with Lawrie. Why do you think it's unfair for Raheem Sterling to demand first-team wages?
Well, I'm not overly saying that he doesn't deserve it. I mean, he is a great young talent. I mean, he still is only 18, but at the end of the day, 50 grand. For a player so young, when you're talking about Balotelli, 170 grand for someone of his age. Age is not obviously to do with it. It's sort of how the player plays. But again, that type of money for that type of, and Liverpool are saying they don't have money to spend for players, but they're throwing that type of money on an 18-year-old whenever they can try and invest now.